Happy Wisdom Wednesday, Coastal Crew. This is Kelsey, and last week Jenny talked to you a little bit about our current MyZone challenge, which is trying to stay within the blue and green zones on your heart rate monitor. That's anywhere between 60 and 80% of your max heart rate. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about what our MyZone heart rate monitor is and how it's an added benefit to coming into our gym. So what this MyZone heart rate monitor does is it gives you an app and it allows you to show and track progress on your workouts over time. It also adds accountability and a sense of community. You are now able to connect with any member that has one in this facility, not only on their workouts in here, but anything that they might do extra or on the weekends at home. And as coaches, it also helps us customize and track your effort and recovery throughout a session to help keep us on track with you. What's really awesome is that we actually have a cardiologist, Dr. Lowenstein, who is a member here to help answer some questions about why it is so important to stay within those blue and green zones and not always try to hit your max effort every single time you're in the gym.
Okay, so Ben, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. My name is Ben Lowenstein. I'm a cardiologist. I've had interest in sports cardiology and interest in just staying fit and healthy, and want to be a good example of my patients and be able to give good advice.
Perfect. So at Coastal right now, we are doing a blue-green challenge through our MyZone, and that is looking at trying to get your heart rate and maintaining it between 50% and 70% of your target max. What would you say some of the benefits are to training in those zones?
So there are benefits to training in many different zones. That specific benefit is considered a fat burning zone. So when there are different things that you need to use in your body to expend energy, and there are carbohydrates and there are fat, and you burn different things at different heart rates and different energy expenditures. So at that kind of mid-range, so a zone 2 to 3, and we can talk about how people can calculate that zone. That is a fat burning zone, and fat burns more calories per gram of fat. But you need oxygen to burn fat. So working out at those lower heart rate zones, you're in aerobic exercise where you are able to take in oxygen and then use that to burn fat, which burns more calories.
So how do we calculate that?
So there are a couple of different ways. There's the very professional, expensive way by having a VO2 max test done. And there aren't a lot of places that do that, that you can just walk in and have it done. I know there are a couple of performance centers that you can do it. It's not necessarily something we do in cardiology practices, although there are some sports cardiology practices that do that. But then there are a couple of very simple formulas, 220 minus your age, and then use a percentage. And everybody's different. I've spent years and years and years watching people on treadmills. I've spent years watching people who train for marathons, train at higher heart rates. I've watched couch potatoes get up on a treadmill and not be able to get their heart rate up very high. And people have inherent engines, and then there are other people that have to work to make their engine work harder and more efficiently.
Absolutely. So the second thing that I wanted to ask you was, how often would you recommend somebody training in that heart rate zone over a period of a week?
And, if you read about this stuff, there are benefits to working in different heart rate zones, including high intensity interval training, and then working in something like 2 or 3. I don't think there's any steadfast rule, but I think it's good to mix it up. Zone 2 to 3 is a hard range to work in for some people. I think being able to mix it up will allow you to work in that range longer. And it takes patience. So for me, I wouldn't be able to run in that zone for very long. I'd look like I'm walking or jogging very slowly. But you got to find activities that maybe take your body weight out of it, like an exercise bike, which would be a lot easier to initially train and work at that heart rate zone for periods of time to then work up to where you can work a little bit harder and have your heart rate a little bit lower.
Awesome. And then if we want to talk about recovery, let's say we are doing something where we were getting into higher zones, more towards our 80% of our target heart rate to 90 to 100, and we want to talk about recovering back down. what are some of the things that you look for to show that you are in a healthy and sustainable recovery rate or recovery zone?
So we've talked about this, and I think in the cardiology world we have a little bit different criteria than you might in the exercise world. So when we are doing stress tests, one of our predictors is heart rate recovery. And our heart rate recovery, all the research that's been done with it, is walking on a treadmill at 1 mile an hour. And if you can drop your heart rate by 12 beats in the first minute, that is a positive predictor, a good thing. So hearts that are abnormal in terms of blockages of heart arteries, poor heart function, are not going to be able to do that over time. But hearts that are normal, that are just out of shape, that's something that you can work on and bring down. And that has to do with all the things that you might do by working at that kind of mid zone, 2 to 3, where you're going to start to recruit mitochondria that clear lactate sooner. That's going to help bring your heart rate down. So that is a number you can alter.
So can we specifically talk about training in those zones and relating it to heart disease and prevention, or if prevention is the right word?
Yeah, it's hard because you can find literature on both hit intervals and kind of zone 2 to 3 training.
Yeah.
And I do think if you can try and find, so it's like, I don't know if either one of you ever run a marathon or a half marathon.
I have actually.
So when I was training for that, there's like 3 different runs you do, right? Yeah. You do slow and long, which is like your 2 to 3. You do a race pace, which is just kind of right at your aerobic threshold. And then you do high intensity interval training. You do those 3 runs. So having that combination will allow you to do more in those kind of higher intensity. So this is the way I think about it, is if you incorporate that kind of a zone 2 to 3 as at least once a week, and you do that for longer periods of time, that'll then allow you to have higher intervals when you do those interval trainings or your race pace.
Perfect. Awesome.
I think doing high intensity all the time sets you up for injury, and you don't recover well.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Calories. You're welcome.
Yes, you get those MEPs, right?
That's right. So when you guys do the MEPs,
yeah,
is that a little counterintuitive that you're just asking people to always be at very high heart rates to get those numbers up?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get at with this challenge. So we're trying to bring people back down and say, hey, we want you to hang in these zone 2 and 3, your blue-green, and understand why we're doing it and understand the importance of it, and not just always going for the higher heart rate zones that give you the more MEPs. Now, the MEPs, they set a goal for everybody to try to get 1,300 for the month. And for some people, that's hard. And for other people, that's not as hard. So I think that if people can understand that that's a goal, that's great. But once I've hit that, I need to make sure that I'm getting the training that is beneficial to my health, not just tacking on those MEPs.
So, it's obviously we all need to push, and getting into a good habit in a community is the right way to do it. And I mean, I've had different communities. I have a cycling community. I have a squash community, but COVID changed that a bit, and having you guys on Zoom was awesome.
Awesome. We're so glad you're part of the family, Ben.